Okay, so this is 8-6 notes, factoring trinomials, day 2. So by now we've done 2 days of factoring trinomials, okay? And we're going to look at how does day 2 change things. Okay, what is different and what does it mean? So as you look at this problem, you can notice what is new today is it's now an equation and it's equal to 0. So because this is the first time we're seeing these types of equations, you can see that there's an x squared. Okay, so that is what's going to make it new for equations. So when we're going to be solving these, it's going to change things up a little bit. Okay, so to do that, we're going to have new steps for solving our equations. If it has a squared, we're going to get all the parts of the equation on one side, and we do that by sorting. Remember, if you move something from one side to the other side, you have to change the sign, okay? Then you're going to factor, just like we've been using all along. And then what's new today is we're going to set each part of the factors equal to 0 and solve. Okay, so as we do this, hopefully it'll make some sense to you. Okay, so here we go. It's already equal to 0, so that's one step that's done for us. And now we're going to factor this. So we're going to come over here. We're going to list the factors for 18. We're noticing that it's negative, so that means we're going to have one positive and one negative factor. And our factors for 18 are 1 and 18, 2 and 9, 3 and 6. We need to get to a 3 by combining these numbers. Hopefully by now you're comfortable with the fact that when you have a positive and a negative and you're adding or subtracting, you're going to be putting them together. So we're going to be subtracting and keep the sign of the larger. So we're going to use our factoring skills from the last 2 days. So x squared is going to give us x and x. And the 18 is going to give us the 3 and the 6. But we have to make sure we give it the correct sign. If we subtract, we want to keep the sign of the larger. So because our answer in the middle is positive, our bigger number is going to be positive. Okay, so far that's not new. Here's where step number 3 is. This is the new part. Okay, we're going to create a T-chart because there's 2 sections here, 2 sets of parentheses. And we're going to take parenthesis number 1 and set it equal to 0. And parenthesis number 2 and set it equal to 0. And at this point, we're going to solve these tiny baby equations by using sorting. X has to be by itself, so that means we need to get this 3 to the other side. So if I take negative 3 and I move him to the other side, he becomes positive 3, and I now have my first answer. On the other side, I have to get x by itself, so that means the negative 6 has to go to the other side. So when I move his side, I change his sign, and he becomes negative 6. So I have positive 3 and negative 6 is my answer. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing over here. It's already set up equal to 0, so we're going to take our 12 and we're going to factor it out. We notice that it's positive here, so that means what do I multiply to get a positive? And I see that it's negative here, so that means I'm going to have 2 negatives multiplied to give me a positive. And I'm going to list my factors. 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3 and 4. Which 2 numbers can I put together to give me 7? Well, it's 3 and 4. So I'm going to come over here and get my parentheses set up. X squared is going to give me x and x. I'm going to put my 3 and my 4 in. And because they're both negative, I'm just going to slide my negative sign in there. Okay? This is what's new for today. You're going to do your T-chart. So x minus 3 is going to equal 0. And x minus 4 is going to equal 0. And now we're going to solve to get x by itself. So x minus 3's got to go to the other side. He becomes positive 3. We've got our x minus 4 needs to go to the other side. He becomes positive 4. Okay, continuing on. This time we're going to factor 35. We notice that this is negative, so we know when I multiply to get a negative, I have 1 positive, 1 negative. And I'm going to list out my factors. 1 and 35, 5 and 7. I know immediately 5 and 7 can subtract and give me 2. So I'm going to set up my binomials. X squared gives me an x and an x. 35 is going to give me a 5 and a 7. I want my answer to be negative. So my rule is when I have opposite signs, I subtract and keep the sign of the larger. So the 7 has to be the negative. Okay, again, none of this is new. This is from lesson 8-6. So if we need to go back and review that, that's where we're going. New for today, we're going to set up that t-chart. X minus 7 is 0. X plus 5 is 0. I've got to get x by itself, so I'm going to move that 7 to the other side, and he becomes positive. For this one, I'm going to move the 5 to the other side, and he becomes negative. Over here, we're going to factor out 42. We notice they're both positive, which means the answers are going to be positive. I can break this out already and list my x's, because x times x gives me x squared. I'm going to start listing my factors of 42. 1 and 42. 2 and 21. We might need to grab our calculator. 42 divided by 3 is going to give me 14. And that's actually going to work because I need a 17. So I'm going to have a 3 and a 14. And I'm going to set up my t-chart. Can I get a little help with the dog, please? So I have them set up to equal, which means I have to get x by itself. So I've got plus 3 here. When I move it, it becomes minus 3. Over here, I've got plus 14. And when I move it to the other side, it becomes minus 14. Okay. Okay, so now we're looking at what happens when it's not set equal to 0. Well, we said in the steps that it has to be equal to 0. So now it's just a matter of getting it equal to 0. So x squared minus 6x. Well, 27's got to move to the other side of the equal sign. So if he's positive on this side, when I move him to the other side, he becomes negative. And now I'm back to where we just left off. I'm going to look and see, I've got to factor 27. He's negative, so that means I've got to multiply a positive and a negative number. So my factors of 27 are 1 and 27, 3 and 9. 3 and 9 will give me a 6, so I know I've got it. So x squared is going to give me x and x. I've got a 9 and a 3. Who's going to get the sign? Well, I got to have a negative, so that means the larger one's going to get the negative. X minus 9 equals 0. X plus 3 equals 0. X is going to equal 9. And x is going to equal negative 3. Remember, if you change the sign, you change the side. Okay, now we've got another one that's not set equal to 0, so we're going to have to do that. So when I move 13 to the other side, it's going to be negative. But order is going to have to be something we pay attention to. N squared minus 13n minus 90. We have to make sure it fits the pattern and it's written in degree from largest to smallest. So you can't put negative 13n at the back. Now we're ready to factor. So we're going to factor 90. We notice that it's a negative, so it's going to be a positive and a negative. 1 and 90, 2 and 45, 3 and 30, 5 and some number, 5 and 18, and that happens to be what's going to get us to 13. So I'm going to have n, and n, and then 18 is the minus, 5 is the positive, n minus 18 is 0, n plus 5 is 0. Okay, now I have to get these solved for themselves. So n, we're going to move 18 to the other side. It's going to be positive. N, we're going to move 5 to the other side. It's going to be negative. And we have our answers. If you're comfortable, you can start getting ready to head to the homework. If you're not, we're going to keep going. Or you can try them yourself. Pause it and try them. and then come back to see the answers. So I'm going to go through these a little bit fast because you can speed it up or slow it down. Okay, so you're going to get minus 16 because we moved it. We're going to break this down and have H and H. We're going to break down 48, and because it's positive and we've got minuses here, the only way we can do that is if we multiply two minuses. So 1 and 48, 2 and 24, 3 and 16, 4 and 12. There's our numbers. So minus 4, minus 12. We're going to set up our T-chart. We're going to solve by moving it to the other side, which basically is just going to change the signs. Okay. Again, we've got to get it all on one side, so this is going to move to this side, making it positive. We're going to factor this out. 56. We see that they're all positive, so it's going to be two positive numbers, and we need to get an 18. So 1 and 56. I know it's 7 and 8. That doesn't work. So we just kind of start dividing. 56 divided by 3 doesn't work. So 56 divided by 4 gives me 4 and 14. And there's my 18. Plus 4 plus 14. Don't forget to bring down the equal to 0, because if we forget that piece in a test, it makes the whole problem wrong. And then we're going to solve these. So D is equal to negative 4, and D is equal to negative 14, because we switched the sign, we switch the side. X squared minus x minus 70 equals 0. That's an X. Okay, so we're going to break down 70. He's a positive and a negative because he's got a negative answer there. 1 and 70, 2 and 35, 7 and 10. I'm going right to it. I'm starting to get more comfortable with my factors. Okay, I'm going to put my 10 and my 7 in. Who gets the sign? Well, we want the answer to be negative, so that means the bigger number has to be negative. I'm going to set it up and set it equal to 0. So X is negative 7 and X is 10. Okay, so X squared minus 18X plus 32, because if we switch the side, we switch the sign. So that means we're going to factor out 32, and we see it's positive here and negative here. So the only way we can do that is with two negatives. 1 and 32, 2 and 16, there it is. That's the only way we're going to get to 18. So we've got an X and an X, minus 2, minus 16. We're going to set up our T-chart. X is going to equal 2. X is going to equal 16. Okay, so that is what we are going to be working on for 8-6. So on the same page that we did on Monday, the 8-6 skills practice, I'm going to slide this in here on this one. We're going to go down to the bottom. And tonight for homework, you guys are going to do that one. I'm going to make double sure so we don't have any mistakes. And I don't have it here, so I believe that's what we're going with. Okay. So if you have any questions, please remind me. Remember, once you have the work done, send it to me with the work so I can give you credit. I'll grade it and send it back, and you can make corrections. Thanks.